My name is Rachel, and I will always be the mother of Goldberg-Polin. Hirsch will always be my firstborn child. He will always be my only son. And Hirsch will always be 23 years old. Hirsch was born in Berkeley, California on a sunny, blue-skied afternoon. When he was almost 4, we moved to Richmond, Virginia. In first grade, Hirsch had an extraordinary teacher named Mrs. Carlton. She was from Ireland and had that gorgeous Irish brogue accent. She told the children on the first day of school that it was shameful that American children didn't know anything about world geography. Well, Hirsch took that on as a personal challenge immediately. We would go to the library every Tuesday, and he would take out books on geography, atlases, and maps. And he would sit in the beanbag area and read National Geographic magazine because they would not allow those to be checked out. By the end of that year, Hirsch knew every country in the world, its capital, population, highest elevation, lowest elevation, and flag. I think he had a crush on Mrs. Carlton, who, if I am not mistaken at the time, was almost 60 years old. He was determined to impress her, and impress her he did. Every year for his birthday or any celebratory occasion, he would ask for a new map, globe, or almanac. He was also obsessed with music and soccer. In 5th grade, he came to John and me to discuss moving out of our house and getting his own place because he felt he was ready to live on his own. He was 10. I remember biting the insides of my cheeks so as not to laugh because he was presenting his plan in such a thoughtful and serious way, and I wanted to give him the respect while he was sharing his earnest idea. John then calmly explained about taxes, rent, utilities, water, and explained that maybe the money Hirsch had been saving was not quite enough at that point. By the time it was Hirsch's bar mitzvah, instead of focusing on continuing to save his funds to move out, Hirsch began planning a worldwide trip he would take when he became big. He planned assiduously, with great care and perseverance. 10 years later, in the summer of 2023, Hirsch finally purchased a ticket for the end of December 2023. That extensive trek was to begin in India. He anticipated his world adventure would last about 2 years. So in the summer of 2023, he went for a practice trip, a 9-week jaunt to Europe. He went alone, explaining that was the best way to meet new people. He told me, "Mama, when you travel with friends, you stay in a clump. I want to meet people from everywhere." He took a small backpack and hiked through 6 different countries and attended 6 different music festivals. He met people from all over the world. He came back looking like he was walking on clouds. He said it had been the best experience of his life. He told us he loved asking questions to people from everywhere, hearing about them, their thoughts, ideas, philosophies, worldviews. He was always like that, our Hirsch. Very little ego, endlessly curious, and hungry to listen. He was a gifted and accomplished listener, which I realize is an unusual and remarkable trait. On October 7th, as you know, Hirsch was attending a music festival in Israel. The festival was attacked by Hamas terrorists. His left dominant arm was blown off while he and 28 other young music lovers were hiding in a bomb shelter. He was then forced at gunpoint onto a truck and stolen into Gaza. And that was 423 days ago. And since that time, we and all of the hostage families have lived on another planet. John and I ran to the ends of the earth trying to save Hirsch and the original 251 hostages who hailed from 29 different countries. They are Christians, Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, and Hindus. The youngest hostage will turn 2 years old this January, and the oldest hostage is an 86-year-old grandpa. We met with presidents, foreign ministers, prime ministers, dignitaries, business tycoons, entertainment industry bigwigs, the Pope. We spoke at the UN, at the World Economic Forum in Davos. We spoke in the fanciest rooms I've ever stood in my life, and in dark, windowless basements in countries near and far. For 6 months, we knew nothing. And then Hamas released a propaganda video of Hirsch in April of this year during Passover. He was speaking animatedly, and we could see the stump where his arm had been. He looked pale and compromised, but alive. Alive. And we kept running, desperate to save him, what every single one of you would have done had it been your son. Every morning I would open my eyes and say the morning prayer that I've said for years, that many Jews say upon waking, Modeh ani lefanecha melechai v'kayam. I am grateful before you, God, who returned my soul to me with compassion. You have so much faith in me. I have always loved that prayer because usually we talk about how we have faith in God, and yet every single morning, the very first thing we say is thank you, God, for having faith in me and giving me another day to do something meaningful in this world. And then I would say, hope is mandatory. Now pretend to be a human. Go. Of course, I wanted to lie on the floor weeping, being traumatized, and I knew that that would not help Hirsch, nor any of the hostages, and so we ran. On the night of August 31st, which was night 330 since Hirsch had been stolen, John called me into our bedroom. He said he had seen online that there were rumors that 6 hostages' bodies had been found in a deep tunnel in Gaza, and the rumor was that our Hirsch was one of them. John handed me my purple book of Psalms that I keep on my nightstand, and he said to me, now it's time for us to pray. And we said Psalms for 7 hours until the Army intelligence officers and the FBI came to our home at 4 a.m. to tell us that Hirsch had been killed. The beautiful 6, Eden, Ori, Almog, Alex, Carmel, and Hirsch, had been held in an airless, pitch-black tunnel, 65 feet underground. It was only 5 feet 5 inches tall and just 2 feet wide. There was no electricity and no plumbing. All of them were emaciated. Hirsch, who was just shy of 6 feet, was 115 pounds. Beautiful Eden, who was 5'4", was 78 pounds. The tunnel was lined with bottles of urine, dark urine, indicating how dehydrated they all were. There was a bucket at the far end of the tunnel, which they used when they had to go to the bathroom, not for urine. They were all bullet-ridden and filthy, having not showered in months. Hirsch was shot in his only hand, his shoulder, neck, the side of his head near his ear, and then in the back of his head. He was found frozen on his knees, with beautiful Eden's head resting on his side. And since then, we were thrust into yet another galaxy. I've learned so much during these past 423 days, but particularly during the last 91 days since we buried our sweet Hirsch. First, I have learned that I am not afraid of this sensation people call grief. I've heard multitudes of people describing it as scary and something that they dread. But when I feel that creep in, I realize it's just my feelings of love for Hirsch knocking on my door. Instead of sliding all the furniture over to barricade those sensations and prevent their entry, I actually call out to him and I say, "Hirsch, get over here, I love you." Now when I open my eyes in the morning, the first thing I do after I say that prayer I told you about is I say out loud, "Hirsch, I love you more than when I went to sleep last night. Be with me today, my sweet boy. Let me feel you and let me feel your light." I have learned that love never dies. It just keeps growing. It is glorious and it is miraculous. I love Hirsch more than I did this afternoon, and I feel him everywhere. He's in here right now, helping me breathe. And when I have a twinge of fear or longing or yearning or a cramp of angst, I call out to him again, "Hirsch, I need you. Come." I have learned the confusing juxtaposition of experiencing being terrorized, traumatized, and in severe agony, while simultaneously having generosity, caring, benevolence, and grace showered upon me. We met Eric Goldstein and Mark Meaden just 2 weeks after Hirsch was stolen, and they, along with millions, literally millions around the world, held us up and stood with us during this darkest of chapters. There is beauty in the binding together of these divergent phenomena, terror mixed with compassion, all manifesting in my 5-foot-tall body. But I have learned some hard lessons too. Until October 7th last year, I was a naive person, and I thought that the world worked one way. Be kind, be respectful, work hard, raise your kids well, pay your taxes. But in my crash course of geopolitics, I came to learn that every single thing is transactional. The world works based on interests and equities. I was ignorant. I just didn't know. I have learned that there is a force more addictive than anything in the world, and that force is power. Once someone has it, they will do whatever it takes to keep it. Scientists say there are 5 substances that are the most addictive in the world. They are alcohol, cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and nicotine, but nothing is as delicious, irresistible, and enslaving as power. I have learned that we have all cornered ourselves into self-selected echo chambers. When I was growing up, and I suspect many of us in this room had the same experience, my parents would watch the evening news. There were only 3 channels, ABC, NBC, and CBS. Each gave over the news the same way. Maybe the man reading the news was wearing a different shade of navy or gray suit, but the news was the same, and their Midwestern accents were the same. So when people would gather together, whether at work, meals, or the corner bar, everyone could talk about what was happening in the world because we all had the same source material. There were different opinions and views, obviously, and that's what kept the debates vibrant and engaging. Although I am a voracious reader, I was never into book clubs, but the premise of a book club makes sense to me. Everybody read the same book, and then we can talk about it. It seems like today we are all reading different books, gathering for book club and trying to discuss what we read. It's confusing and it's chaotic. I have learned that a lot of us are lonely, and I've learned that a lot of us are scared, and a lot of us are in tremendous pain. And I have learned that we are not great listeners anymore. There is a concept in Judaism called machloket l'shem shamayim, argument for the sake of heaven, or arguing for a higher goal. Naturally, we all have our opinions, beliefs, and attitudes, but when we are trying to get to the truth, we have to be open and careful to listening to others who do not share our views. The late Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, who was the chief rabbi of the United Kingdom, talked about the difference between when we argue for a holy purpose or when we argue to win. When we argue to win, the sole objective is victory. We are only listening in order to formulate in our mind what our sharp and calculated retort will be. It is about crushing the ideas and the person who is talking. It is sport. It is being a gladiator of debate. The aim is to belittle and conquer the other. But arguing for the purpose of truth is for the goal of making things better by revealing what is actually happening. This requires confidence in oneself and the humility to say maybe, just maybe, there is another way of thinking about this. Instead of thinking this idea could be threatening, opening ourselves to the truth offers the possibility of enlightenment. In any dynamic, genuinely trying to understand the other person helps. We don't have to agree with them, but understanding why someone thinks as they do can help both parties transcend a deadlock. This art of listening respectfully to each other, whether one-on-one or massive groups of diverse people, is perilously rare to all of our extreme detriment. But Hirsch excelled at this. He found it fascinating and even exhilarating to talk to people who did not think like him, to try to find out why did they think that way. As John, our 2 vivacious daughters, and I try to navigate our way forward in our new world, I want to be intentional and to internalize and try to live out lessons I learned from Hirsch. I say often, it's not that Hirsch was perfect, although many of us parents like to think that about our children. But Hirsch was the perfect son for me. When I think of myself, I can't help but feel blessed. Yes, me, blessed and lucky. Obviously, losing Hirsch the way we did is dreadful and excruciating. But I am so privileged to have had him with me for 23 years and 3 days. And if the option was never having Hirsch in my life, or having him and losing him, and having this pain be the price, it is a price I would pay again and again. Yes, 1,000,000 times. Yes. God was so generous to give me my precious Hirsch, and I am forever grateful. But what is critical to me now is getting home the remaining 101 treasured hostages. It is absolutely doable. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. As long as the people with power and influence decide that it is an interest and an equity for them. I am just a regular person, but I know that there are many in this room that have the ability to make this happen. And it might be that the only reason you do it is because it is righteous, it is holy, and it is the singular most godly act you will ever do in your life to help these innocent and beloved souls who are languishing in Gaza while we sit here. When I look ahead to the odyssey John and I are embarking upon for the rest of our life, I don't want Hirsch's death to be an anchor around my leg, dragging me down and drowning me. I want his exquisite life to be a compass that is ever embedded in my heart, guiding me forward, ever present, ever felt, ever illuminating my path. May we all be blessed with resilience, recovery, light, and hope. Always hope.